I'm just going to test my microphone because you've all gone quiet. So presumably you can hear. Yeah, I once said to an audience that I asked, can you hear me at the back? And somebody shouted back that yes, they could, but they gladly swap with somebody who couldn't. So, anyway. Right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. It is now afternoon. It's dead on 12, well, according to my clock on the phone anyway, although I do notice working at home, I don't know whether you've all noticed this, so you've got your iPad, your laptop and your phone and maybe a clock on the wall or something. They're all showing different times. Have you noticed that? It's really, and by quite a bit sometimes, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, so welcome to the inaugural Integrated Care Board meeting for Suffolk and North East Essex. I'm Will Pope, and I'm going to, with your help today, have a go at chairing this first meeting. So we should remind ourselves, should we not, that we're a unitary board, that all partner members are full voting members, and all members here here in an unfettered way. So the focus is the Integrated Care Board, not where one comes from. Let me then first of all start with item 1. This is a formal meeting. It's potentially not going to be the most exciting meeting in the world, but let's see. I might hoist by my own petard there. Item 1, notification of any questions from the public. And I don't believe that we had any questions from the public raised within the time frame set in the agenda. But I believe we do have some questions raised since. And at the moment, what I'm planning to do is deal with those at the end of the meeting under item 15. And there may be more in between. So that's questions from members of the public. So welcome and introductions. Obviously, I've introduced myself, but I think it would be great if we went round the board table and said very, very briefly, name, rank and serial number, job, who we are, and where we're from. So, Maddie, should I start with you and then we'll just go round? Are you okay there? Yep.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Maddie Baker-Woods and I'm the Alliance Director for Ipswich and East Suffolk.
I'm Laura Taylor-Green. I'm due to start shortly as the North East Essex Alliance Director.
Good afternoon. I'm Edward Creasy, and I'm the chairman of the Ipswich and East Suffolk Alliance.
John, yes.
John Spence, Essex County Council Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Care, Chair of the Essex Health and Wellbeing Board.
Afternoon, Paul Gibbard, Director of Performance Improvements. Nice to be here.
Steve Feast, one of the non-executive members on the board.
Hello, I'm Andrew Kelso. I'm the Medical Director with the Icb.
Hello everyone, Richard Watson, Deputy Chief Exec for the Icb.
Chris Armitt, Acting Director of Finance for the Icb.
Ed Garrett, Chief Executive.
Amanda Lyes, Director of People and Workforce.
Hi, I'm Tanya Curry, Non-Exec Member of the Icb.
I'm Frida Barty. I'm a GP from North East Essex.
My name's Nick Rayner. I'm a GP that works in Newmarket and the Suffolk GP rep.
I'm Jo Mail, Corporate Governance Manager for the Icb.
Jim.
I'm Craig Black. I'm Chief Executive at West Suffolk Foundation Trust.
Good afternoon, Nick Hume, Chief Executive at ESNEFT.
Hello, I'm Lisa Nobes. I'm Director of Nursing for the Icb.
Hello, I'm Peter Whiteman. I'm West Suffolk Alliance Director, day one for me. Hello, everybody.
I'm Dave.
I paused because I was just come from West Essex. So I'm going to try and get that right.
It'll take a while, Peter. It'll take a while. Yeah. Okay. Well, lovely to see you all, and thank you very much for coming today. Item 3: apologies for absence. I believe we've got 4: Steve Clark, Sue Cook, Patrick Higgs, and Stuart Richardson. I don't know of any others. Is that? Yep. Okay. And then item 4: declarations of interest. Does any board member have any declaration of interest or potential conflict of interest with any agenda item other than those of which we are aware? And no declarations of interest. And that therefore takes us on to item 5, the Icb Constitution. I'm going to hand over to you, Ed.
Thank you, Chair. I will promptly hand over to Amanda on this because she's done all the hard work. But we're asked to note and adopt the Icb Constitution, which has been consulted on widely leading up to today and follows all of the NHS England guidance that we've been given and has been approved by NHS England. So, Amanda, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ed. So, as Ed said, this is something that we've been working on actually for probably a year now. And it's a document really that underpins everything that we are about as an ICB. It provides the framework, the governance infrastructure, the membership, how we recruit our members and so on. It very much is an important document. It's very much a live document, and we as an ICB will be encouraged to review and update to make sure it maintains our vision and purpose as time goes on. And I think the other comment that I would want to make, Chair, is that I think we want to commit to actually not only keeping it alive and fresh, but actively reviewing in about a year's time, just to make sure we're delivering everything that we said we would deliver as part of our Constitution. So very important, and something that we just can't put on the shelf, but something that we have to be reminded of continually. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction, Ed and Amanda. First of all, looking around the board table for any questions or points you wish to raise. And I don't see any. We're asked to note and adopt the Constitution. I wonder if that is unanimous. And I'm looking around, don't see anybody objecting. So shall we take it that the board resolved to note and approve the Constitution unanimously? All done? Agreed? Thank you very much all. In which case, let's move on to item 6, which is the agreement of the standing financial instructions. And again, it's a receive and approve from a report from the Acting Director of Finance. Chris, I'm going to go to you.
Yep, so the board is asked to adopt the standing financial instructions, also known as detailed financial policies, contained within the agenda. So anyone that wants to look through, that's page 136 of the governance handbook and 190 of the agenda pack. So the standing financial instructions really set out the responsibilities of all the members of the ICB regarding financial governance and decision making. So as I say, the board is asked to adopt the standing financial instructions in front of them.
Okay, thank you. And again, board members looking around for any comments or questions. Otherwise, I don't see any hands raised. Are we content to approve and adopt unanimously? Any objections? I think, therefore, we resolve to note and approve unanimously. Agreed? Thank you very, very much. Moving then on rapidly to item 7, which is the approval of the Statutory Committee Terms of Reference. And again, it's the same receive and approve process. Amanda, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So in accordance with our Constitution, we have 2 statutory committees, Audit, Renumeration and HR. The terms of reference for both committees are contained within our handbook, and both committees we propose are chaired by a non-executive member for Audit and Renumeration, Steve Clark and Tanya Curry. The ICB also has a number of other statutory committees, and these are set out within our schemes of reservation and delegation, and again contained within our handbook. but for the purposes of today, we are required as a board to receive and approve the terms of reference for those 2 statutory committees. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. And same process again. Any questions or comments? Is anybody not keen to adopt these? Have we got unanimous agreement again? Yep, nods. Again, shall we therefore resolve that the Statutory Committee terms of reference are approved unanimously? Done? Agreed? Thank you very much all. And then item 8, Amanda, it's still with you for the ICB Governance Handbook.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, in accordance with our Constitution, we are required to have a governance handbook, which is a very important document. So within our governance handbook, we actually have all of our committee terms of references, and there are 7 sections within our handbook, notably the functions and decision map, which I'll come back to in a moment, the 9 terms of reference for all the committees that underpin our ICB, the scheme of reservation and delegation, our standing financial instructions, our standards of business conduct and conflict of interest policy, our people and community strategy, and actually at the end we have a list of eligible nominating practices for primary care partner members. So that content is something that we are required to have within our handbook, which needs to be kept alive like the Constitution and reviewed and updated as need be. We are also required to ensure that our handbook is published on our website, which goes hand in hand against the Constitution. And I think another point to note is the handbook, live document, it has to be updated and refreshed, and we as a board are able to update as we need to and doesn't need any further upward approval, so we can continually update without having to seek further approval there forward. So really the purpose of the handbook today is for us as a board to adopt, note and endorse. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? And, oh, John, yes, I see your hand there.
I'm just mindful about what was said there at the end. In terms of updating, I wonder if you would be content to take delegated authority where minor updating is required with only substantive elements coming back to the board.
Absolutely, John. Very good point.
Okay, and we'll take that as agreed unless anybody objects. Agreed? Good. So we're asked to receive and approve. Again, let's see if that's unanimous. Any objections? No hands raised, so we'll say received, the board resolved to receive and approve, and that was a unanimous decision. Agreed. Good. Lovely, thank you very much. And Amanda, still with you, confirmation of the key ICB roles.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as it's our first board meeting, we are required obviously to have a number of key items on our agenda. Another one of those key items is for us as a board to confirm a few key roles of our board. Now, they are only a few today, and as we move forward and as we mature as a board, we will be obviously reviewing and updating and adding. But in terms of today, we are required to support and approve the 5 key roles which are contained within the report. And for transparency, they are our Caldecott Guardian, our Freedom to Speak Up Guardian, our CSIRO, Data Protection Officer, and our Accountable Emergency Officer. And all of those key roles are contained within the report, and a nominated officer lead is proposed against each one. As I said at the beginning, this is only a few of the key roles that we need to be adopting as a board, and as we mature we will be revisiting, possibly retweaking, amending as we see fit, but also there may be other roles that we want to actually add as we mature going forward. So for the purposes of today, it's for us to receive and approve the key roles that I've just articulated. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Amanda. And again, any questions or comments? Looking around the board, I don't see any. Again, can we adopt this unanimously? Any objections to that? I don't see any again, so the board resolves to receive and approve the key ICB roles as outlined in the paper and Amanda's introduction? Agreed? Yep, agreed unanimously. Lovely, thank you very much. And Amanda, you're on a roll. Item 10, the adoption of key policies. Over to you.
Thank you very much. So for the purposes of today, we have one key policy that we are required to adopt as a board, and that is the Standards of Business Conduct and our Conflict of Interest policy. So both documents are key to the safe, effective running of our board, and the purpose of the policy is to ensure that all of our staff understand their individual responsibilities in relation to business conduct and the application and appropriate management of conflicts of interest within the ICB. And as we move forward, we will see conflicts of interest at every meeting where we have to declare and the like. But I think this is very good governance, and any board, whether it's our board or whether it's a provider board, would want to ensure that there were appropriate standards of business conduct and that all staff adhere to, and that we also make sure that our workforce as a collective is aware of our conflicts of interest policy. So both documents are here today for us to note and approve, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Nick?
Just a question, if I may, Chair, through you, is about how this will be disseminated to the wider staff. I think there's often uncertainty, particularly around conflicts of interest and people fully understanding what that means. And we know, certainly within the NHS, we're not always great at doing that. So I'm just interested in how will the new policy around standards of conduct and conflict of interest be communicated? And what assurance will the board have that people who are required to know and understand the regulations do in fact have that opportunity? Thank you.
Okay, over to you, Amanda.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick, for that really useful and appropriate question. So my answer would be multifaceted. I think through our good local inductions, through our adherence to mandatory training, the reporting of that through our respective boards and indeed this board, but also making sure that we maintain a live, active conflicts of interest policy that we actively promote and publish on our respective websites. And I think we as a board would want to be making sure that we are on top of those, that we are actually getting the appropriate training, induction and registered, published accordingly.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Amanda. Any other comments? Oh, John, yes.
Well, both building on Nick's point, given the size of the Integrated Care System Partnership Board, I hope we can have a means by which people register their interest, a conflict of interest once, and it is therefore kept on the record rather than we have to go around it every time. Just so let's create an efficient process. But in terms generally of policies coming down the line, I'm guessing that it may be that nationally some model policies are being developed so that each ICS can adopt or amend. And in future, if there are amendments to the national model, that will always be a useful way of us understanding the rationale for those.
Thank you, John. I'm going to go back to you, Amanda.
I would absolutely agree with everything that John has said. Very well made.
Okay, so simple answer, yes. Thanks, John. Any other comments or points? So with those two comments and the answers that assurance that Amanda has given, are we able to receive and approve unanimously? I see nods. I don't see any shakes of the head. So shall we resolve that the board, we record that the board resolved unanimously to approve the adoption of the key policies, and that was unanimous. Yep. Okay. Done. Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Amanda, for that run of papers there. So next item, item 11, is a discussion around the current and future NEM, which is non-executive member of the ICB, current and future NEM capacity and diversity. So we've had some offline discussions about this, or some board members have. We're interested in discussing then as a board whether we think that we've got the skills capacity, the diversity, the sheer number of people that may be required for because we've only appointed 3 at the moment. Say only, not in a critical way, of course. We're very grateful for those 3, but there's a lot of work to do. So, Tanya, I was hoping that you would then be able to summarise the offline discussions, and then we can see where board members are on that one.
Thank you, Chair. I think really to echo what Will has said, we had a fairly informal conversation about have we got the capacity, are there skills gaps, how we're really thinking about diversity of thought and discussion around the board table, and the genuine question of have we got enough people from the NEM capacity when we compare ourselves to some of the other systems. So it was a live debate literally a few weeks ago. We have tabled it to discuss at Remuneration Committee this afternoon, but again, referring back to our chair, it would be really good if we could just garner some thoughts this afternoon so we can think about if and how we wish to move this forward.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. And in particular, any thoughts, if you have them, that you would like the Remuneration Committee to then develop further. So, any comment? And Ed, yes?
So I suppose we can't keep adding to the size of the board too much, because otherwise we'll need a bigger race course to fit us all in. But I'm very conscious we don't have the diversity, and particularly ethnic diversity, that some boards might have. So I'd be in favour of us reviewing this, and I think one of the ideas that we could look at, and this is in part around succession planning as well as getting a more diverse board, is whether we might have associate NEMs, so that we bring some different people around the table to support, and that's a way of developing people from within the system rather than through potentially a national advert. So that's just one idea to consider.
Okay, and unless anybody objects to that, we'll throw that into the thought process. So I think we've got Nick and Frida. Could I go to Nick? Are you sure? Okay, Frida, you're first.
It's difficult to comment when I don't really know where the gaps are, if that makes sense.
No, that's a fair point, and actually I think that's a debate that the Remuneration Committee could have at more depth, because actually it's quite a complicated matrix. So maybe a future paper back on that post-rem from Remuneration Committee with a recommendation back to board. I think what we're trying to judge today is whether there's an enthusiasm to consider this further. And if that's the case, over to you, Tanya.
Yeah, thank you. Totally agree with that. We almost don't know ourselves yet well enough to really think about what the gaps may be. So there are questions about the timing of this, if we want to push a button, and what that looks like for the whole board. But I think you're absolutely right. We're a new team at the moment, so we do need to understand that.
So maybe a gap analysis, Frida, would be useful output back to the future board. Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Nick, and then I'll come to Steve. Over to you, Nick.
My question was actually fairly similar. It was going to be, for those not party to those out of this room conversations, I wondered who the 3 NEMs were, aside from yourself, and what expertise and backgrounds they came from. But it's a similar idea.
Okay. Well, actually, we could fill you in on that a little bit if you wanted to. Would that? If we haven't got Steve Clark here with us today, because he's one of the apologies. So Steve has got a very strong financial background. Perhaps, Amanda, you might say a few words on Steve's behalf if you like. But let me start with Tanya. I'll then go to Steve, because you were going to come in anyway, Steve, so perhaps you could do an intro to yourself. So, Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. I live in North Essex. I'm a nurse by background, so I trained in Mid-Essex in the early 90s, and I specialised in end-of-life care and oncology. I then talk about actually going over to, I call it the dark side, but the different side of management in terms of the healthcare sector. And I moved into the voluntary sector about 22 years ago, where I have taken a number of senior clinical roles and leadership roles, and in the last sort of 12 years I've worked as charity chief exec. So I now have a consultancy where I work as an interim chief exec for a range of charities, organisations, Sue Ryder, Teenage Cancer Trust. I've just finished a big assignment at the Ramblers, the walking charity, and I'm now just working with a charity called Impetus, who specialise in funding opportunities for young people from diverse backgrounds to help them excel in education and employment. My lens is really on communities and social mobility, and actually how we get the best out of people in our local landscape, how we work in partnership with a really enthusiastic love and vision for good governance, and actually how we make this work for the communities that we live in and we serve. So that's my background.
Thanks, Tanya. Steve, over to you.
I'm Steve Feast. Most of my work at the moment is either as a professor in the University of East Anglia, where I'm a professor in the medical school, though I mainly teach on MBA programmes. I also work for Innovate UK, which is a big government funding agency, and do a lot of work with industry across the region. Formerly, I ran the Academic Health Science Network, which was connecting universities, industry, business and health and care services to accelerate innovation. I'm a GP and psychiatrist by training. I trained in Cambridge and in fact spent 6 months working what was called a 1 in 2 in Newmarket Hospital, which is in the old days where you worked every other day and night, which was quite challenging. And I've run bits of the health service, Deputy Chief Exec of Beds and Luton, and I've worked in Cabinet Office and the Department of Health, so I bring a wealth of experience. Live to this discussion, I think, is we have some gaps in our experience. One of our 4 main objectives is economic growth. So I'm keen we think about how we link across into business, industry, and the education and development sector. And I think we should also think about the dimensions of equality, not just through the protected characteristics, but also through economic and social characteristics. I'd be quite keen in our discussion later we think about how this is a development opportunity for people as a non-executive member, and how might we get people in and help build their own portfolio of skills and experience together. Steve Clark, by the way, I've worked with for many years. He was the finance director at the region here and has been chair of the Princess Alexandra Hospital, and has a huge wealth of experience. And I think we're very lucky to have Steve as our 3rd colleague.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Steve. Did that cover your point as well, Steve? Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. So let me, Amanda's going to volunteer to give a précis on behalf of Steve Clark. We promise you won't get into trouble over it.
Frida wants to come in.
Oh, yes. Could I? Yeah, let's give Amanda first. Yeah, over to you, Amanda. Thanks, Frida.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, I'm not Steve Clark, but let me have a go at giving a précis of Steve. So, Steve Clark is going to be our Audit Committee Chair. He lives in Ipswich and has been in our system region for quite a while. I'm sure a lot of us already fondly know Steve. Steve, back in the day when we had the Strategic Health Authority, was the Regional Finance Director. So I think we're very lucky, we're very privileged to have Steve on our board, and I think he's going to be a great asset. And I think the only thing that I would want to add is he currently has a NEM-NED type role within the local university.
Yeah, in the University of Suffolk. Yeah, true. Yeah. And thank you, Amanda, for doing that at no notice as well. Frida.
Yeah, I just wanted to challenge the board perhaps, but Ed on what he said in terms of the diversity of or lack of this board. How do we compare with other systems? And also, who has the depth of knowledge with regard to diversity and inclusivity on the board, if we have that gap?
Yeah, no, good points. Ed, would you like to respond to that, and then perhaps Amanda as well?
So I haven't studied the makeup of all the boards around the country, but there will be more diverse boards than this one here. I think we're largely a white board, aren't we? So, and that doesn't feel right. But we don't want to have a kind of tokenistic approach to this either. Equality and diversity might be a specific area that is missing. To your point, what is missing around this board? It falls within the people portfolio that Amanda leads, and we've got various people working on it across the system. But good question is, do we want to specifically someone to represent that area of work and to champion it. And personally, I'd be very much in favour that we consider that.
Yeah, is that helpful, Frida?
Yeah,
and
I think it's very important to have someone.
Yes, let me go to, if I go to Amanda first and then I'll come to Steve. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, indeed, I echo everything that's been said. I think in terms of where the role sits, I think it's fair to say it probably sits in quite a number of board roles, but I think something that we need to strengthen. And just to really note that we, as a system, had recently appointed an EDI individual to work across at ICB. Yesterday I was informed that actually there was a sudden change of mind, so we do have a current gap that we are actively looking to pursue quite quickly. But I think in terms of the discussion that we've had around NEM, identifying our gaps and the conversation that we're going to be having at Renumeration Committee, I think your points, Frida, we need to play into that conversation, play out through our gap analysis, which will then be brought back to a future board meeting for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Steve?
I'd welcome a conversation with you, Frida. I founded Inclusion Health when I was in the Cabinet Office and commissioned the Marmot Review of Health Inequalities when in NHS England. So there's some of us with individual expertise, but I think collectively it's how we behave, isn't it? That how do we start moving where we understand health equity impact assessments? How do we start understanding how the data that's presented to us has additional demographic, social data that helps us understand the impacts of the decisions we're making and the outcomes and the experience and the journeys that citizens that we're responsible for are going through. So I think there's a big shift to be made as we get the population health data that we can then have a much more sensitive discussion as board members.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And John?
Well, thanks, Will. I totally agree with what Steve said, and in my experience, boards with good diversity thereon will make better decisions. I just reacted, Will, when you mentioned the word to represent. Everybody here must be unfettered. And so you've just, we mustn't bring people on to represent X or Y or Z. I could talk about local government, you can talk about demographic mix and all aspects. What matters is that the board has access to all those lived experiences and to people who come from those backgrounds and can make those decisions in the full knowledge of the conditions or issues that those people have.
Yeah, good point, John. Well made. Thank you very much. And Frida?
I'd just like to come back on that point. I think in specific, I mean, I am a brown Asian person, so I suppose I'm a diverse member of this board, and I think whilst it is an unfettered board, I think it is a specific thing that has to be represented in some ways, because it can't be represented by people who have no experience of being that person. Yeah. And I feel very strongly about that as an Asian woman.
Yeah, and I think this is, we're probably in danger of violently agreeing with each other over the direction of travel and the balance issues, aren't we? So, would it be a fair summary to say, thank you for that discussion, by the way, and the points raised, would it be a fair summary to say that the board supported the direction of travel in seeking a paper to come to the board in the future, including a gap analysis and covering all the issues discussed today, such that at a future board meeting the board could make a decision about whether it did or did not think it was a good idea to increase the NEM capacity. Is that a fair summary? Is everybody content with that? Yep, I see nods, nobody objecting. So resolved. Excellent. Thank you very much, all. In which case, item 12, building our board, how will we work together? Ed.
So this is really to flag an issue. So we will be meeting in public on a bi-monthly basis, and then we plan to meet in private in the in-between months. So the question is, how do we use that time as a new board to establish ourselves and to set our values and culture in a really positive way? So flagging that as the challenge, we've also got to develop a strategy over the coming months to publish, which Richard will be leading for us on, and that will no doubt feed into the board development programme. But what I'm looking for either today or outside of the meeting is some volunteers from within the board to form a planning group for those development sessions, because I might have an assumption of what would be useful to the board that might be completely wide of the mark. So it would be very helpful to have that. And I know there are colleagues around the table. I know, for example, West Suffolk FT have done some excellent work around board development in recent times, and I know that Craig will have some very good ideas about what they've learned from that process that we could feed in. So looking for sort of 4 or 5 people maybe to work with Amanda and myself to make sure that we get a really good development programme in place for this board.
So on a task and finish group basis, yeah. Craig, was that Ed volunteering you?
That's definitely what it sounded like to me. So I'm very happy to do it, and it plays into the discussion we've just had about improving the quality of decision making. We obviously don't have the benefit of broader perspectives around this table. I would hope that we address that in some of the changes that you've just outlined, but I think we can do some work about the quality of decision making, recognising where our deficiencies lie, and that can always get better.
Okay, thank you. And Steve, yeah?
Yeah, I'm happy to get involved. I just was a question really for everyone. This is by nature a very dry board meeting because we're approving an awful lot of things. I think in that development session we should be thinking as a different organisation representing system players. As a board, do we have future board meetings where we talk to ourselves and present ourselves with our papers? Or do we think about what it is we are presenting to the system and the public, and how we structure the more formal board sessions in order to make it a rewarding place for people to come and to understand the sort of difficult decisions that we are being asked to make in a very difficult financial and clinical environment. So just that might be part of the development discussion as well.
Yeah, I saw a lot of nods around the table to that, Steve, so thank you for that. We'll add that into the thought process, I'm sure. Lisa.
Thank you. I was just, as Steve was saying that, I was just thinking about there is the potential for the meeting to be quite dry, but there is, and how we need a philosophy of how we keep it real. How do we make sure that the public, the citizens, the patients that we will be talking about, how we make sure that we bring that to life within our papers, how we make sure that we're always kind of checking ourselves with, is that the reality of what people are experiencing? I know you can do, and I think having a development session on that would be really helpful, because there are models that we could use. I know obviously our provider trust will use stories, that can be great, and it can work really well. Sometimes it doesn't work so well, but that can be a one-off, and I think we need to think about, in everything we do, how are we going to always come back to what do our communities feel, what do our patients feel? Is that the truth and the reality?
Okay, thank you, Lisa, for that. I'm going to ask Ed to comment, and then I'll go to Maddie.
Yeah, I completely agree with Lisa. I think it's important that we, and I mean this in the best way, that we feel uncomfortable around this board table. Because there are so many challenges that we need to listen to and act upon and think through. The keeping it real point that Lisa made, I think it is crucial, and there are different strategies that we can consider, from patient stories to other means, but I can wholeheartedly agree with Lisa on the point she's made.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's true to say that this will be the driest board meeting we ever have, although these discussions might not be dry actually, but certainly I don't think I've ever seen an agenda as dry as this one, but it's mechanistic and we have to go through it, we have to do it. Let's face it, it's start-up day. Maddie.
Thank you. Just in relation to the sort of development of this board, I'd like to advocate and offer that we consider the development of the alliance committees as well alongside, so that we are growing and developing together as one system with the alliances and the Icb and P. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Amanda, and then Amanda, you might also, with Ed, perhaps summarise together a conclusion as to what you've heard and the way forward that you suggest.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, building on what Lisa has said around the communities and what they feel they want and the like, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we had a very similar conversation at our System People Board 2 weeks ago from a staff workforce perspective. And one of the conversations we had and outcomes that we're going to take into future meetings is around the staff voice and the staff experiences actually being played out, because it's all very well a number of senior staff talking through, but we will actually want to feel what it's like from our own staff. So that's something that we're going to be taking forward as a people board. And we also be wanting to strengthen the link between quality and the quality of care through our people and workforce. So I just wanted to identify and articulate that golden thread, if you like, which I think is quite important.
Okay, thank you very much. Just before I go to Ed to summarise and next steps, Nick?
Apologies, Chair, I wasn't quite quick enough on the button. I'm really pleased that my colleague from West Suffolk has taken the hint from our Chief Executive. I think one of the potentially tricky areas is about making sure that the uncomfortable meetings aren't the ones that just happen in private, Ed. The balance between a public board and a board in public, and making sure that we have the right conversation in the right forum. I think that's really, really important. So that smaller group, I'd really ask you to look specifically at those areas. I think the staff issue that you raised there, Amanda, absolutely right, but I suppose the question is which staff? Because if we're talking about the staff just employed by the ICB, sorry,
yeah, well
this might take a while. I've got to be an ICP at 3 o'clock. Oh dear, it's going to be a long day. Is absolutely your experience of working as effectively commissioners? How do we then pick it? Is it all the staff, and then we're talking tens of thousands, and how do we get that reflected? So I think it's really complex, and therefore it is worth that investment in that subgroup to really understand what's in private, what's in public, the balance between a board in public and a public board, and it has to be a board held in public. Then how do we encourage a public conversation that isn't just about the questions at the end relating to a couple of items on the agenda? So I think it's a really complex. And actually, I have to say, what a great opportunity, because certainly in the provider sector, we are now so locked into the way that we've always worked and the rules, and very little flexibility within our constitutions. Yeah. So really encouraging the group to be as innovative as we can possibly be, given that we've got effectively a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, good point, Nick. Thinking differently, yeah? Let's do it, yeah, and innovation. So I'm going to go to Ed to draw some threads from that discussion and conclusion. And Ed, I know also you were looking for a task and finish group, and you've got one volunteer, very forward, who put himself forward with great alacrity in Craig, so thank you for that, Craig. But you might also give a method of communicating back and a deadline for the volunteering, perhaps. So over to you.
So I think the threads have been drawn together through the conversation, haven't they? Steve's invited us to think differently and model a new set of behaviours. Lisa's invited us to keep it real and connected to the communities, and Amanda likewise with the staff. So, and I think we've seen some very good challenge and healthy debate today already. So that's very positive. On the mechanical side of it, I will email out the board, invite volunteers, and as well as the volunteered with Craig, and we'll look to agree that group by the end of next week.
Okay, thank you. And report to future board. Yep, okay, thank you very much. Everybody content? Lovely, thanks all. So, item 13, any other business? Non-notified prior. Any other business that colleagues would like to raise? And over to you, Ed.
It was really to say, although we've referenced the dry meeting, the amount of work that's gone into all of those policies and documents is enormous. So thank you to Amanda, Lizzie, who I can see in the fetching pink cardigan there, and many other colleagues too. They've put in a massive shift to get ready for today, and I think it's a tribute to them that's been so smooth so far.
Oh, thank you for saying that, Ed. Yeah, excellent. Any other business? Otherwise, we're done. So item 14, just for the record, date and time of next meeting. The next formally scheduled meeting is the 27th of September 2022 at 2 o'clock. We have two provisional dates, and you'll see on the agenda that it says only for use if necessary, and that's because when we were trying to of course, nobble people's diaries to make sure they were available, that we were then, and this was several months ago, we were unsure of what would actually happen today, what would pass through, and what might need to be done that we didn't know about. It was a bit of the unknown unknowns, wasn't it? So we do have two provisional dates that we might yet use, and if we do, the papers will go out in advance. In the normal way. Now, Richard's looking at me. Are you thinking of saying something here, Richard?
I think we possibly will need a meeting on the 26th of July because we've got
You've got an item,
one business
haven't you?
case that reaches the threshold for board decision. So just putting that down now.
So there might be a single agenda item. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless we can look at it in a different way. I'm just tipping you off now. There's almost certainly a need.
Okay. Good. In which case, then, final item, question 15, questions from the public on any agenda item today. I'm going to first go to Simon. And Simon, you've been, none were raised in advance of the meeting with the 3 days prior so that we could give a prepared and written answer. But some, I think, have come in since, and you may have some from the online community. Simon, so over to you.
Yes, thanks, Will. We've had a couple of questions that have been received via email, none that have been received during the meeting itself, but I can go through those questions for you now if you'd like me to. The first one is from Anthony Dooley. He's written, I am disappointed as someone who has regularly attended the CCG meetings over the years on a regular basis and on behalf of the public that the communication about this meeting was poor, including the extremely difficult process of accessing the details on the ICS website. That's Anthony Dooley there. The remaining questions come from Barbara Robinson. There's 4 questions from Barbara. The first one is, this ICS-ICB change has come about so fast. How are the public expected to know about it and understand it is a mystery. Barbara Robinson's second question is, after 16 years of solid co-production work for ME services, in brackets excellent support from PCT, CCG's commissioners, now ICS, an imperative for the ICB must be to formally agree to take co-produced ME service health inequality and inadequacy onto agenda and verify endorse at board level fast. Will you give that commitment? Third question is, will you, the new ICB, appraise and give priority status to ME service development following Sajid Javid's recent keynote statement on needs for ME services and research? And the fourth question from Barbara Robinson, as we all know, Patients, Carers, Community Engagement Partnership, CEP, voluntary organisations, is after 16 years of solid co-production work for ME services, an imperative for the ICB must formally agree to take co-produced ME service health inequality onto the agenda and verify endorse at board level fast. Will you commit to that? Those are the questions.
Those are the questions. Thank you, Simon. Well, what I suggest is, because obviously there's five, if I counted them right, Simon, there's 5 questions there. And probably what would be better and would be the more valuable is if we then, having received those, we'll put a written question and a written answer to the question to the minutes. and on the website for public consumption. So then we'll be able to give a, if you like, a proper and considered answers. Is everybody content that we deal with those questions that way? Yep. Okay. Thank you. So if there are no more questions from the public, it is 12:48. I think we have got 12 minutes extra in our lives on ICB launch day. So well done everybody. Thank you so much for coming, to members of the public. Thank you to our board members. Thanks for all the work that you've done to get us here. This is the beginning of the new world, though, isn't it? So we're on the journey. Thanks very much, everybody. Meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you.